This evening, the Republican National Convention was this week in downtown Milwaukee and came to a close on Friday. Former President Donald Trump has officially been chosen by delegates as the Republican nominee for the next president of the United States. Trump also announced his highly anticipated running mate in the election, and there was much more. We're taking you there to the largest political convention so far this year. This is Before You Vote. Welcome, I'm Mike Broomhead. The Republican National Convention was this week, and I was there for both my radio show, the Mike Broomhead Show on KTAR, and for this show as well. Just to give you a little history of my experience at these conventions, this is my third convention. I was with Mitt Romney when he was nominated in Tampa. Then I was with Donald Trump when he was nominated in Cleveland in 2016. And of course, this one in Milwaukee where Donald Trump was nominated again. Now, they're all different in their own way, but they all have one goal. And that is for both parties. This convention is where their delegates come together after a long time of campaigning, and they have a sign of unity. They lay out their platform and their vision to the American people and how they want them to vote and what they're going to accomplish if this president is elected to be president once again. So that's the reason that they get together. It is also, and this one was so exciting, where President Trump nominated his vice presidential candidate, his running mate. In my time there, I spoke with Republican candidates for primary elections across the 50 states and with media figures from both national and local outlets in the news. And today, I'd like to share some of those conversations with you. So please stick around as we go inside the RNC. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Hey, welcome back to Before You Vote. Joining me is former comms director for the Trump campaign in 2020, Mark Lauder. Mark, thanks for doing this.
It's good to be with you, Mike.
We've talked about this so many times before, but I want to ask you, how is this election going to be different? How is the campaign going to be different in 24 from 2020?
The biggest difference is that Joe Biden didn't have a record in 2020. It's not like we could go back and campaign against what Barack Obama did or go back into 50 years prior to that when he was a member of the United States Senate. Well, now he has a record, and it's also a record that people don't like, whether it's inflation, gas prices, grocery prices, obviously our open border, the wars that are raging in the Middle East and in Europe. I mean, these all happened on Joe Biden's watch. There's a direct comparison between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and I think a majority of the American people are saying, we liked it better under Donald Trump.
So is that why you saw the theme for night one was Make America Wealthy Again, night two, Make America Safe Again, and so on? Is that the target is let's go after these issues?
Absolutely, because I think it's important to remember that Joe Biden was losing this election before the debate. That's the reason why they called for this Hail Mary debate at the earliest point we've had in modern history. Now, they were hoping to change the trajectory of the race. They did. They made it worse. But they were already losing going into it. So we need to lean into those policies because it really doesn't matter whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, whomever they decide to nominate, their failed policies are still their policies. And that's what the American people, I think, are going to be voting on.
So you are a comms director. You're a communications person by trade. Let's talk about what the other side is doing. Now, today, Adam Schiff came out and said that the president needs to step down. How big of an uphill battle is that to overcome that and then take your case to the American people?
Well, I think right now, when your opponents are self-destructing, get out of their way and let them. But right now, we're going to continue to make the case on the policy side. They'll work out their internal issues themselves. But I don't think it's going to change the trajectory of this race. When you look at what's going on with the maps, the Electoral College is expanding. The states are expanding, and they're expanding in Donald Trump's favor. And there's only two things you never have enough of in a campaign. It's been true when I was working on mayor campaigns, governors, and all the way up to the president of the United States. You never have enough money, and you never have enough of the candidate's time. So every minute that Joe Biden has to spend in Virginia, in Minnesota, in New Mexico, in Maine, New Hampshire, all of these new swing states, and every dollar he has to spend there is a dollar he doesn't have to spend in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, and in Michigan. And that's a bad place for Democrats to be. And it's why Adam Schiff and a lot of Democrats are hoping to change horses in this race, even though wouldn't that be ditching democracy in order to defend it?
So, yeah, and that's the policy stuff you're talking about. So let's talk about the money part, because also the announcement, two things. One is there are some big donors on the Democrat side are going to withhold money for a while, and we heard Elon Musk and others. Elon Musk commits $45 million a month throughout the rest of this campaign. What does that say?
Well, it tells me that, that Mark Zuckerberg, who put his thumb on the scale in the 2020 election, is not going to be able to do that unchecked in the 2024 election. And so if you have a super PAC out there with that kind of money that can run ads talking about securing our border, making gas prices lower, making the price of groceries lower, that's what I think is going to ultimately move the American people. Then add on top of that, America generally elects strong leaders, the appearance of strength. We project that strength around the world. Whether I agree with your politics or don't agree with your politics, I can think we can almost all agree, except for maybe Jimmy Carter. American presidents were strong. And when you contrast Joe Biden with Donald Trump, well, there's no real argument there.
So the idea of this iconic picture, now obviously what happened on Saturday was tragic, but that picture that came out of that we're hearing so many people like Elon Musk and these very wealthy people. I saw the former CEO of Home Depot on a show saying it changed his mind, that what he saw there was courage and strength. Is that changing people's minds?
I think it will reinforce the narrative that they already believe. If you were on the fence and you saw that moment, obviously that's something that strikes a visceral chord in the American people. And we should never want that. We don't want that on either side of the aisle. But what we want are American presidents to be strong. And you have that iconic image of Donald Trump. We've seen Joe Biden, and it's been a while that we've been seeing this weakness on the foreign stage. We're hearing now secondhand, weeks later, that even foreign leaders are saying, wow, I didn't realize he was this bad. That's a bad place to be in. Not only are you losing on the policy, you're losing on the perception of strength. And that's not a good place for Democrats to be.
You're a numbers guy, and you told me these numbers because you were involved in the campaign in 2020. Where the polls are now, where they were at this time in 2020, different places, what does it tell you?
It tells you that there's a massive shift going on in America. When you look at 2016 and 2020, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were up by 7 points nationally, 8 points nationally. Also in all of the battleground states, it varied, but it was roughly 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Now in all of those states, Donald Trump's up by 3, 4, 5 points. He's up by 3 points nationally, which tells me there is a 10, 11, maybe 12-point swing in the American people since both 2016 and 2020 compared to now. In an election in 2020 that was decided by 43,000 votes in 3 states, in 2016, it was 86,000 votes in 3 states. To see an 11-point shift, 10-point shift in the electorate, that tells me there is a massive shift going on, because not once in 2016 or in 2020 do the polls ever overestimate Donald Trump's strength. They've always underestimated it.
And you expect that to continue?
Unless the pollsters have gotten really good here in the last couple of years, I wouldn't see why they would have it right this time, but have been wrong for the last 8 years.
Mark, I always appreciate the insight. It's great to talk with you.
You too, Mike. Anytime.
All right, we'll be back here in a minute on Before You Vote. Don't go anywhere. More coverage of the Republican National Convention is coming up next. See who I had a chance to speak with. This is Before You Vote. Welcome back to Before You Vote. It's our Tracking Arizona segment. So once again, we're joined by Mike Noble from Noble Predictive Insights. Thanks again for doing this, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Gen Z, I want to talk about a couple of things in Gen Z, starting with voting attitudes. And some of the polling you did is quite remarkable, I think. I want to point to a couple of things. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are out of touch with people my age. 80% agree with that statement. Is that a big number to you?
Yeah, it's a huge number. And when we partnered with the ASU Center for Independent and Sustainable Democracy, it was interesting that, this study where we did about 1,300 Arizona voters aged 20 to 30, really got one of the biggest in-depth looks into this kind of Gen Z population. And so we're seeing that, some of the takeaways were that they really don't like the partisanship or kind of politics as old or as usual. They're not fans of it, and they're very much against the grain when it comes to partisanship.
It's interesting you say that, because that's the other one here on this. There should be more choices on the ballot besides Democrats and Republicans. Again, 80% of respondents, that's from both parties and independents, agreed with that statement as well. What does that tell you?
It tells you that that politics is going to be changing. It's just a matter of when at this point, as these generations, get older and get more impactful in the electorate. So, and you're already seeing stuff on the ballot this year where you have 2 ballot initiatives, one being closed primaries, another one being open primaries, which couldn't be more vastly different. But as this generation gets older, you see it kind of seems that it'll be an inevitable conclusion that we will head away from this kind of more closed system and kind of open this up more, and also providing more options to the electorate.
And interesting, when it comes to the issues that they find very or extremely important, it's not surprising cost of living and affordable housing are 1 and 2 on the list. But when you look on here, when you look down, are any of these numbers surprising to you?
No, it's interesting. Like, it's obviously some of the pocketbook ones when you're coming out of college, or in your 20s. Those are kind of the items you're more focused on. However, I would say that the one's kind of interesting is where gun rights is, because gun rights has been kind of traditionally seen, at least among the younger generation, as maybe not as a popular issue, but it's tied right there with climate change.
Yeah, it's right there, and it's also above LGBTQ plus issues, which, as a younger generation, I would seem to me would be more important to them.
Correct. Maybe you don't believe everything you read out there.
Yeah, true enough. One very quickly on this list where it talks about public safety gun violence, they find that to be 70%. So that's a big number.
Yeah. No, when it comes to like public safety, especially when you see some of these shootings, especially a decent amount of them happen on campuses or universities, et cetera. Again, you look at what things are more hit close to home. So they're not really anti-gun, but also, safety is important to them.
Mike, it's always great to get the info from you.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll be back. It's a look at the Republican National Convention from inside the event. See who I sit down with next. This is Before You Vote.
With faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
For the 3rd time, Donald Trump has claimed his spot atop the Republican ticket. He's given countless speeches in his career, but some calling this one in Milwaukee Thursday the most important and anticipated. His first since a gunman tried to take his life in Butler, Pennsylvania, just days ago. A moment he recalled in detail.
I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet.
Adding he owed his life to a graph he turned to look at during the attack.
I think it's one of the greatest. It was done by the Border Patrol, one of the greatest charts I've ever seen.
But the speech delivered Thursday night, different than what he initially wrote. Scrapped in the wake of the events in Butler, Pennsylvania, Mr. Trump says he wanted to send a new message, one of unity.
Because there is no victory in winning for half of America.
Yet still taking a jab at President Biden.
If you took the 10 worst presidents in the history of the United States, think of it, the 10 worst, added them up, they will not have done the damage that Biden has done. Only going to use the term once. Biden. I'm not going to use the name anymore, just one time.
Praising his new VP pick, J.D. Vance, and promising better days for all Americans.
I extend to you a hand of loyalty and of friendship. Together we will lead America to new heights of greatness like the world has never seen before.
Joined on stage following his remarks by his family, including former First Lady Melania and daughter Ivanka, who haven't been seen often on the campaign trail.
Hey, welcome back to Before You Vote. I'm Mike Broomhead, and joining me is Cindy Kazau. She is from Arizona, but she's here with the National Federation of Republican Women. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
It's great to see a familiar face.
Yeah, so excited to see you. Thanks for making time for us today.
Have you been enjoying the time?
Oh my gosh, I have had a fantastic time. This is certainly a bucket list item that I can now check off, and it has just been amazing.
So when you look at coming here, what were your expectations? Is this your first convention is the best question.
Yes, this is my first convention. I was elected as a delegate in 2020, but because we didn't have an in-person convention, this is my first one.
So how big is the organization? The National Association of Republican, is that it?
The National Federation of Republican Women is the largest grassroots Republican women's organization. We are a nationwide organization and have about 65,000 members and growing.
And Arizona's got a big chapter.
We do. Our Arizona Federation of Republican Women has just over 3,000 members statewide.
How important is, and I know you are a champion for this, but how important is the female vote, the women, the suburban women especially, to the Trump campaign?
Very important is the women hold down the house as well as work. We juggle a lot of responsibilities, and it is tremendously important. And especially with together with our spouses, we want to ensure a beautiful future for our children. So very important.
One of the things they talked about in the 2020 campaign was that Trump didn't do very well with suburban women. Do you think that's going to change?
I would hope that that's going to change and feel very confidently that it will. His messaging is really trying to speak to women, to mothers, grandmothers about ensuring a prosperous and safe future for our children.
How powerful was the mom that spoke who lost her son to a fentanyl overdose?
Oh my gosh, definitely there were a lot of tears nearby, and it really hit home for a lot of us. We are all affected by the fentanyl crisis, and many of us know people who have been affected by that very closely. So impactful.
And I didn't know this until I talked to her. Her children were all born in Arizona. She's from Scottsdale.
Right. I didn't know that until she spoke too, and so having that home connection was especially touching.
What were your expectations in coming here this week? What did you expect to see in here?
Well, I definitely expected to see a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement. I've definitely seen that. It has been awesome to see so many of our elected officials from all across the nation. I just didn't realize just how bustling it would be. I didn't know that part, but it has been awesome.
What about the pick of J.D. Vance as for the vice president? Were you surprised by it, or were you excited about it?
Yeah, it excited me greatly. I think it's awesome to have a young Republican in that role, and the future is bright with our young Republicans, our teenage Republicans. I think that says a lot about the future of our party and the fact that we want to maintain and keep it strong.
Do you see J.D. Vance being the leader of that future generation? Is he capable of doing these 4 years as VP? And then do you see him moving on and being a candidate for president?
He might. I need to see how he does as our vice president first, but he will definitely be playing a huge role in that.
What message do you want to send? Because people in the Valley are going to see this show this weekend. So what do you want the Valley to know about your time here, and what are you bringing back to them in Arizona?
Sure. Well, besides having a wonderful time amongst friends and checking off that bucket list item, I will say, Arizona, get ready. If you've not voted yet, please vote. We're in primary season. Get ready for that general election. Please play a part. Help knock doors. Send those text messages. Heck, just put a yard sign in your yard so your neighbors know that you're a resource to them. It takes all of us to be involved. For the women out there, please join one of our Republican women's clubs. It's a great organization. Reach out to me if you want to get plugged in, and let's win in November.
All right, she said it all. We'll be back here in just a few moments on Before You Vote. Thanks for joining us this week. I hope you found the inside look at the Republican National Convention insightful. Remember, July 30th is primary election day. Mail-in ballots have already gone out, and the last day to request a mail-in ballot is this Tuesday. Next week, we're talking to Carrie Lake and Mark Lamb, the Republican candidates for United States Senate. We will see you next Sunday right here on Before You Vote.